Hi and welcome to Best in Tesla and the new show Overflow number 9. Volkswagen said at their earnings call that they will show the new power of the Volkswagen Group here in 2025. And things are actually looking to move along nicely for full self-driving supervised coming to Europe. And the hate against Tesla continues, but there might be a shift in the public's perception. And we continue to hear about demand problems for Tesla, but the numbers are starting to show a rise is coming. And Trump has now bought a Tesla, so he might finally learn something about EVs. And Elon has announced that Tesla will be doubling their production output in the US over the next 2 years. And an analyst is saying that we might have hit the bottom of the Tesla stock. All of this and much more in today's episode. Let's dive right in.
Let's put our living stereo stylus in this groove.
Volkswagen wrote in their earnings deck this week that 2025 to show new power of Volkswagen Group. Proof points along strategic levers. So can't wait to see all of that this year. But unfortunately, Volkswagen still thinks more models is what will make them competitive in the BEV market. But Volkswagen themselves have said they were no longer competitive on cars. So do they really think that 30 new EV models is going to help with that? Or just complicate the production and supply chain and make their cost of the production even higher? And they also showed us how many jobs they plan to cut in Germany. As we can see on this chart, the Volkswagen management want to cut at least every third job in Germany over the next 6 years. Volkswagen Groups want to reduce the workforce within the Volkswagen Germany from 111,000 to below 75,000 by 2030. I don't think the unions are going to like that very much, but they do expect to get their BEVs to be about 10 to 14% of their production here in 2025. So if they can stay at 9 million units as last year, that would mean that Volkswagen expect between 900,000 to 1,260,000 units. But would that really be enough? Because most of those sales are going to have to be in Europe because of the stricter CO2 emission targets. The 2025 target is 93.6 gram per kilometer, required a reduction of approximately 13.4 grams per kilometer. So Volkswagen could be running into a massive CO2 problem and will have to sell around 25% more BEVs in 2025 to comply with the 15% stricter EU limits. So what does that actually mean in terms of numbers? Well, this suggests that the group needs to increase its BEV share from an estimated of 18% in 2024 to 30.7% in 2025, a rise of 12.7 percentage points, aligning with reports indicating that a 12% average increase is needed across the manufacturers. So with 2.7 million total sales projected for 2024 by the Volkswagen Group in Europe, assuming stable market condition, a 30.7% BEV share requires 829,000 BEVs sold in Europe alone. Last year, they sold approximately 486,000 BEVs, so that means that the Volkswagen Group need to sell about 343,000 BEVs more in 2025 just in Europe to not get huge fines for missing their CO2 targets. But it of course also all depends on how many hybrids they sell and so on. So it is of course not this simple, but the Volkswagen Group likely needs to sell approximately 340,000 to 420,000 additional BEVs in Europe in 2025 to meet the targets, assuming the total sales of 2.7 million of course, and the rise from 18 to 30% BEV share. But as I just showed, Volkswagen expect 10 to 14% BEV share in 2025, so about 900 to 1.26 million. But the low end of that number is basically what Volkswagen need to sell in just Europe not to get fines. So to not lose a lot of BEV market share everywhere else, they better get to that upper end of this target of 1.26 million units, or there will not be much left for the rest of the world. So that would mean the Volkswagen Group would need to grow their BEV production by more than 60% this year to meet that goal. That sounds very unrealistic to me. I think Volkswagen will have to pull together with some pure BEV players like Tesla, as this seems almost impossible for them to pull off. Even though Volkswagen is still targeting their 25,000 euro EV, the ID.2, this year, it will probably not be high volume this year, so Volkswagen really has their work cut out for them to get to their targets here in 2025. And it seems like things are moving very nicely along for full self-driving cars here in Europe, with the European Commission starting to work with its sense of urgency. I made a whole video last week about the strategic dialogue from the European Commission and how they want to accelerate the implementation of full self-driving tech in Europe. So this really votes well for Tesla getting approval for full self-driving supervised here in Europe. So full self-driving supervised could hit European roads by late 2025, as this is only level 2 systems, which handles steering and braking but keeps drivers in charge, and that now fits snugly into the EU's existing framework under the regulation 2018/858, combined with the UNECE's new DCAS rules, driver control assist systems, affected since January. Green lights advanced assistance like Tesla's, with in-camera based monitoring already meeting safety standards. The European Commission's on-board fast-tracking autonomous tech via its strategic dialogue, and Tesla's pitching it to regulators, starting with the Netherlands in May. With billions of miles of US data and no need for new laws, it is much less about if and more about when this will happen. So I do believe we will see full self-driving supervised on the streets in Europe by this year, maybe as early as this summer, and definitely by the end of this year. And we also have the UNECE working on a draft for robotaxis that is expected to be ready by the end of this year as well. So with the push we are seeing right now from the European Commission to push for autonomous tech, I don't think we will see any objections against that, and we'll probably just send that draft to the European Parliament for approval. And with a 6-month objection period, we might even have a framework ready in Europe for robotaxis by mid to end 2026. So in theory, we could have Tesla's unsupervised coming to Europe by the end of 2026, or maybe 2027 at the latest. I don't think many people saw this coming, but we have to remember we are not starting from scratch in Europe. We have the framework with the regulations 2018/858 plus the DCAS ready, and that is kind of making the backbone of the next phase. And the UNECE is already working on the robotaxi rules. And the European Commission will probably not have any objections to it, as they have been out saying that we need full self-driving tech on the streets here in Europe faster. So things are speeding up even here in Europe. So if we can have autonomous vehicles on the street in about 2 years, even though the US might have it in June of this year, that would still be very fast for European standards. So full self-driving unsupervised in 2 years here in Europe, that would be amazing. Crossing fingers. And the hate for Tesla continues, but it seems like there might be a shift in the public's perception. I still hear a lot of people talk about Tesla sales shrinking all around the world and thinking it is only because of Elon's politics, not even mentioning that Tesla is making the shift from the old to the new Model Y in 4 factories all at once. How can people report on this and not take this into the calculation is beyond my understanding. And is saying that Tesla sales will sure be down in the US this year because of Elon. Well, I wouldn't be that sure. It could, but we have just seen a new poll from Morning Consulting amongst almost 70,000 Americans shows that yes, the Democrats that want to buy a Tesla has fallen over the last year, but the amount of Republicans that want to buy a Tesla has increased significantly. So it looks like that people that want to now buy a Tesla should easily be offset by the public that don't want to buy a Tesla. So yes, we hear more about the hate against Tesla in the news, but there are just as many people in the US that are supporting Tesla, and the most crazy people that are vandalizing Tesla's private property, that have just completely lost the plot, well, they are only fueling the side that wants to support Tesla and fight these criminals that are vandalizing Tesla stores and private people's cars. So when you look at this chart and then come to the conclusion that Tesla's US sales will for sure be down this year, I wonder what facts they are basing that conclusion on, other than, look, Tesla sales are down in Q1, without saying a word about Tesla's retooling all their factories for the world's best-selling car. It's just ridiculous. Yes, there might be some Democrats that don't want to buy a Tesla now, but that could also change over the rest of the year. I don't know what will happen in the US, of course, but to already be calling demand problems in the US because of the first 2 months of sales this year, before the refreshed Model Y comes out, seems a little pessimistic to me. And there might even be more Republicans that actually wants to buy a Tesla now, after Donald Trump was out showing that he is buying a Tesla to support Elon Musk and Tesla.
I'm going to buy because, number one, it's a great product, as good as it gets. And number two, because this man has devoted his energy and his life to doing this. And I think he's been treated very unfairly by a very small group of people. And I just want people to know that you can't be penalized for being a patriot. And he's a great patriot. And he's also done an incredible job with Tesla. And I mean, nobody else has a car company started up in the last 30 years that's been successful. I don't think so. And not only successful, but super successful. And because he's able to find billions and billions and billions of dollars of fraud and waste and all of the things. I mean, our country is going to be very strong very soon because of a lot of the things that he's done and a lot of the things that I'm doing. And there's no better team, but there's no better for what we're doing. There's nobody like this, and he shouldn't be penalized. And when I watched the other day, I said, I can't believe it. It should be the opposite. People should be going wild, and they love the product, but because he's finding all sorts of terrible things that have taken place against our country, they want to penalize him in an economic sense. And I just think that's very unfair. So I just wanted to make a statement. I'm going to buy one.
And at the same time, we are seeing that over 80% of Americans support Elon in what he's doing with Doge, or at least the majority of the people. So with all the hate and terror Tesla is seeing at the moment, I think this might have the opposite effect, that people now want to support Tesla because of the insane and undeserved hate Tesla's poor employees are seeing right now. And Elon has also announced that Tesla will double its American production over the next 2 years, so I don't think Tesla is actually seeing a demand problem in the US either. We could also see, as Connecting the Dots shared, that after Trump's endorsement of Elon Musk, the search for buy Tesla, which indicate buying intentions, completely exploded. With almost 3 weeks to the end of the quarter, it would be interesting to see quarterly results. Despite all the crazy attacks, it seems like demand should not be a problem. With switching production line and ramping up the Model Y, supply will. Yep, and we are seeing this more and more. People talking about, let's just buy some Teslas to support Tesla against the underserved terror attacks.
Just to push back, can we all buy a Tesla? Let's all go buy a Tesla, get rid of your Pinto, your hatchback, Gremlin, whatever you're driving, and go get a Tesla.
Trump also said that the violence against Tesla's dealerships will be labeled domestic terrorism and perpetrators will go through hell. Elon also shared this video by Jeffrey, which I think showcase what many Americans are starting to feel, that the terrorist attack are having the opposite effect than what the terrorists were hoping for.
Some say they should be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company. You know, I've stuck up for the NFL. I've stuck up for a lot of American companies and other companies, but American companies. I did a very big favor for the NFL. I do favors for all of them. When you heard an American company, especially a company like this, supplies so many jobs that others are unable to do, When you do that, those people are going to go through a big problem when we catch them.
Yeah, it's quite literally terrorism. Here are some of the things they're doing because they don't like Elon's politics. Here's an example of charging stations. This dealership was shot up, graffitiing new vehicles, burning new vehicles. Not to mention, they're also graffitiing random people's cars who have Teslas. Now, here's the definition. Terrorism is the use of violence to achieve a political goal by creating fear in a population. It can involve threats or actual violence against people or property. Domestic means at home, foreign means abroad. Are people in this country that are domestically trying to influence politics, right, through threats and violence. These people are quite literally domestic terrorists, and they should be treated as such. I think the FBI should get involved and take it seriously. I will be hoping to see Kash Patel and the FBI step in and start taking this seriously, because it's getting out of hand. But it's great to see Trump out in public supporting Elon. He deserves every ounce of it.
So we might be seeing a shift in demand for Tesla's cars coming, but let's see what will happen over the next few months. And we continue to hear about demand problems for Tesla all over the world. But we might see the beginning of the shift as the Model Y starts ramping up. So another place we have heard Tesla having demand problems for years is China, but we know that the pre-orders of the Model Y have reached over 200,000 units, so demand is looking stronger than anyone else launching a new model in China. So it's all about how fast can Tesla ramp up production, because again Tesla is down in Q1 in China, but here we can clearly see with the numbers we get from the Chinese Passenger Car Association that Roland also put very nicely into a chart, that the Model 3 sales in China from January to February are up 52.4% compared to last year. About 17,000 in 2024 to 26,000 in 2025. So there doesn't seem to be any demand issues for the Model 3 in China. Total sales were down 13.7% due to 18,749 fewer Model Y sales as a result of the refresh. Yes, and we can also see that Tesla sales in February were 30% Model Y and 70% Model 3, which is usually the other way around. And here we can clearly see what is going on. The Model 3 seems great demand, is up 52%, and we know that there are 200,000 pre-orders for the Model Y, so that is really just a question of ramping up production to get those numbers back up. And we are seeing they are already rising. Last week, Tesla sold 13,800 units, so actually better than last year in week 10. So we should see Tesla sales in the next few weeks getting up between 15 to 20,000 units, which is typically where they are at in Q1 and Q2. And we can also see on this list here that shows that Tesla is actually leading in luxury brand sales in China for week 10, so last week, outpacing competitors like Mercedes, BMW, and Audi, as reported in a Chinese automotive ranking. So even without the full ramp of the Model Y, Tesla is still outpacing the German premium brands in China. So it does seem like demand is very good in China, and soon we will also have the sales numbers to confirm that as well, not just in China but also in Europe and other places. But this is not just me saying that. We also have the incredible institutional investor like Ron Baring, who completely gets it, as he had this to say to CNBC.
Right now, in the middle of the year, you're going to start seeing new products, new refreshes. When you talk about Europe sales being down 40 or 50%, that's you don't have any cars. They're not making them. They're not making them because they're going from the Model Y, which is the best-selling car on the planet, 1 million two cars a year, to not making them. And so how are you going to have up sales when the car that's driving your business isn't being made? And so that's what's happening, and you're starting to make them now in the refresh model. And as you see pictures of people saying, man, this is a great, incredible car.
And let's squeeze in the last short news topics into this news show. Yes, it's time for the Tesla Shorts. We have a new study that also shows very clearly why Jim Farley says the tariffs will blow a hole in the US auto industry, as AJ also shared on X. This study shows that the Tesla Model Y is the most American-made vehicle. Model S is number 4, Model X is number 9, and Model 3 is just outside the top 20 at spot 21. Out of 400 analyzed. There is not a single General Motors or Ford product even amongst the top 2020. So why does the government continue buying mostly Mexican and Canada-made GM and Ford products if these companies source most of their vehicle production inputs outside of the US? It makes no sense. Even Honda and Volkswagen source more material components and labor in the US than General Motors and Ford. If you want America to retain most value from a car purchase, you should buy a Tesla Model Y. Yep, if you like the US and want the most American-made car, the safest car, the most efficient car, the most fun car, well, all of that comes in one car, the Tesla Model Y. And we have heard that Tesla went away from making both front and rear casting for the new Model Y. And people have been wondering why that would be. But Sandy Monroe just had a nice talk with Lars and Franz from Tesla. And Lars explained that it was to get all 4 factories to be able to build the car in the same way, to streamline the supply chain, as they did apparently run into supply issues with the old versions, as the 4 factories were building Model Y in different ways. But now every factory is going to spit out new Model Ys built completely the same way, streamlining everything. So let's see how fast this ramp is going to be, because it really could be something special. And BEVs continue to gain momentum here in Europe, and here in my country in February we have 66% BEV market share. So as you can see on La Raffle's great chart here, we are shooting straight up that steep part of the S-curve. If this continues, Denmark will go from about 15% BEV market share to 80% in only 4 years. That is extremely fast. Norway has already transitioned, but they went from 15 to 80% in just about 7 years. So we can see that other small countries in Europe can transition extremely fast, and by the end of this decade, so in 5 years, we should see most of all the small markets in Europe have made this transition to be over 80% BEVs by then. And since Trump's endorsed Tesla by buying in Tesla as well, we of course have mainstream media coming out with deceiving headlines like this one. Trump bought a Tesla with 37 recalls noticed against it. But as Sawyer also wrote, 24 of those recalls were remedied with over-the-air software updates. Total US recalls in 2024, including physical and software update recalls, FCA 72, Ford 62, GM 33 and Tesla 15, and 99.2% fixed with an over-the-air software update. The media is really grasping a straw here. Yep, no wonder that these news outlets are losing ground, as people just know they can't be trusted anymore. And if you're still crying over your Tesla stock being down and not doing what I have just done, bought some more Tesla stock, well, listen to what Jim Cramer had to say about the situation.
But this is really important because we're going off the charts with Larry Williams. He's a legendary technician and market historian who's been the best in the business since before I learned how to drive. He's written over a dozen books, created a ton of proprietary technical indicators, and most important, he's got a stunning track record, especially over the past 5 years. And I revere him, always have. Larry's the one who called the COVID bottom, for instance, in April 2020, back when just about everyone was terrified that we'd be stuck in a prolonged government-mandated recession. And you know what he's doing tonight? He's calling the bottom in Tesla. First, I want you to take a look at the weekly chart of Tesla paired with Larry's proprietary valuation model. According to this model, Tesla's finally reached undervalued territory. And when the stocks come down to these levels in the past, it typically attracts real buyers, leads to a big bounce. Speaking of buyers, check out this chart of Tesla's paired with Larry's measure of professional accumulation. Even as the stocks come down, this picture shows very aggressive buying. Not selling, but buying. That's typically an harbinger of higher prices. Professional money managers have begun adding to positions while individual investors have been throwing in the towel. That's what you've seen. And it usually means that you should be buying alongside of these investors. I agree.
And we are seeing a lot of noise about tariffs and trade wars between the US and China and so much more. And they think this is a huge problem for Tesla. But I think it is the other way around, as we also could see with Ford and GM is probably going to be the one that will hurt the most with the tariffs for Canada and Mexico, because Tesla has set themselves up with as big as a local supply chain as possible. But this is not just for the US, as Michael Dunn also wrote on X. Tesla has built what is arguably the best distribution of manufacturing risk in global auto industry. Shanghai for China, Austin Fremont for North America, Berlin for Europe, each with its own supply chain. But Mr. Musk kept supply chain for the Chinese and the US factories relatively separated, unlike other auto companies that depend heavily on imported parts. He set himself up nicely in the event of trade goes sideways and tariffs go higher, and that serves him well today. Just like I have talked about before, that the Tesla Model 3 that is imported to Europe from the China factory has much lower tariffs as well than the other Chinese model, as it is calculated on how much subsidies they get locally in China to build the cars, as Tesla doesn't get much, whereas someone like BYD gets a lot. This means that the Tesla Model 3 from the Shanghai remains more competitively priced compared to the other Chinese EVs that are hit with higher duties, giving yet another advantage to Tesla. Tesla has just positioned themselves so nicely in the automotive market and will be the one hurt the least if we have a big trade war coming. And I don't think Volkswagen's German employees are going to be glad to hear that Volkswagen's ID.1, the electric vehicle, will be built in Portugal. Volkswagen says it makes most economic sense and will roll off the production line in Portugal starting in 2027. And just a little reminder, as people are getting confused, as Pete wrote here on X, sorry, I keep getting confused. Are the bad guys the people that are building electric car, or those torching them? Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious for everyone that just has a little bit of reasonable sense. And let's end off with this chart about Europe BEV sales, because we hear nothing but bad things in the news. Because Tesla is down. Well, Tesla's Model Y, despite hardly any new refresh model in these numbers, year to date is still Europe's best-selling BEV. And Model 3 is number 3. And as a brand, Tesla is number 2, just after the Volkswagen brand, but only about 8,000 units behind. So let's see what will happen now, as Tesla has started deliveries of the new refreshed Model Y. I predict that Tesla's Model Y will still be the best-selling BEV in Europe in 2025, despite all the doom and gloom headlines. That is all we have time for in this Overflow News Show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. It really does help this video out a lot so others can find it on YouTube. And if you did like it, maybe you want to consider hitting that subscribe button, notification bell, so don't miss out on future videos just like this one. And if you're already a subscriber to the channel, thank you so much for the support. But if you want to support the channel even more, remember you can, for as little as $1, become a patron of this channel, or become a member of the YouTube channel to get a shout out as some extra perks like early access, ad-free versions of my videos, exclusive videos. So hit the members button or check out Patreon to find out more. And don't forget to follow me on X. I post pretty much all the news as it comes out and a lot more. And check out the merch store to get some merchandise and support the show. It is also possible to support the show without becoming a member or a patron. There is a donation option down below or on my website bestintesla.com. You can also become an executive producer and get news articles, exclusive videos, behind the scenes, and access to all my research, charts and spreadsheet, also on bestintesla.com, or as simple as hitting the super like button. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.